George Clooney, Batman and Robin. When Batman and Robin hit theaters in 1997, it became a cultural catastrophe that froze the Batman franchise for nearly a decade. With a production budget of roughly $125 million and a domestic box office of only about $107 million, the film's failure erased all plans for sequels and forced Warner Bros. To rebuild the franchise from scratch. The film's collapse stemmed from what executives called a toyetic mandate, a marketing-first directive that prioritized merchandise over storytelling. Toy companies were consulted in pre-production, dictating costume details like the infamous bat nipples, the neon-lit sets, and even vehicle designs. Director Joel Schumacher was pressured to make a film that could sell toys instead of honor the gothic tone established by Tim Burton's earlier entries. George Clooney, who replaced Val Kilmer, was caught in the center of this studio-driven circus. His Bruce Wayne was written as a charming socialite, lighthearted where previous portrayals had been brooding. Clooney's performance was earnest but trapped inside a script filled with campy dialogue and garish spectacle. His later reaction to the failure became legendary. He publicly apologized for destroying Batman and has since joked that he refuses to show his son the movie. Halle Berry. Catwoman. Catwoman was intended to be a landmark moment for female-led superhero films. Instead, it became one of the most infamous flops in studio history. With a production budget of roughly $100 million and a domestic gross of only about $40 million, Warner Bros. Lost tens of millions and abandoned all sequel plans. The core failure lay in the creative decision to discard the established character of Selina Kyle and replace her with an entirely new identity, Patience Phillips. The script, reportedly unfinished when filming began, introduced absurd mythology involving a mystical Egyptian cat that resurrects Phillips and grants her feline reflexes and bizarre quirks such as a compulsive love for catnip and an obsession with canned tuna. Rather than grounded noir, the story devolved into a battle against an evil cosmetics company selling toxic anti-aging cream, an idea critics derided as laughably shallow. Berry's acting was not the cause of the implosion. She was a recent Oscar winner and one of the industry's biggest stars. Trapped inside incoherent material, she leaned fully into the physical demands of the role, performing elaborate stunts in a stitched leather costume that became more meme than icon. After the backlash, she famously attended the Razzies in person, clutching her Monsters Ball Oscar in one hand and the Worst Actress trophy in the other, a moment that redefined Hollywood humility. She later admitted the experience carried real pain, noting that she didn't make it alone but bore the blame alone. Ryan Reynolds, Green Lantern. Green Lantern was meant to ignite a new era for DC's cinematic universe. Instead, it became a $200 million cautionary tale that lost roughly $85 million domestically. The film collapsed under the weight of poor creative choices and catastrophic over-reliance on digital effects. Director Martin Campbell, who later admitted he never should have done the film, was instructed by Warner Bros. To cut costs late in pre-production. Practical sequences were scrapped in favor of cheaper CGI. The result was a hero rendered in a fully computer-generated suit that looked artificial against equally unconvincing alien backdrops. Parallax, one of the Green Lantern's most menacing villains, was reduced to a shapeless brown cloud, a visual metaphor for the film's lack of focus. Reynolds' central issue was tonal. His natural sarcasm and comedic rhythm clashed with the stoicism expected of Hal Jordan. Instead of commanding gravitas, he played the role with the same glib, self-awareness found in his romantic comedies. Yet what saved Reynolds' career was his precise management of the failure afterward. Through Deadpool, he reclaimed control of his public persona, openly mocking Green Lantern in interviews and even staging a post-credit gag in Deadpool 2, where he time travels to shoot himself while reading the script. He met his future wife, Blake Lively, during production, one of the few bright legacies of a movie that became the definitive study in mismatched tone, weak direction, and franchise implosion. Taylor Kitsch, John Carter. John Carter stands as one of Disney's most notorious financial disasters. With a production budget exceeding $263 million and domestic earnings of only $73 million, the studio suffered an estimated loss of about $200 million. The failure was not rooted in performance but in marketing malpractice. Director Andrew Stanton, writing the success of Pixar hits like Finding Nemo and Wall-E, was granted unprecedented creative freedom. He personally overrode Disney's marketing department, removing Of Mars from the title to avoid alienating audiences he believed would find it too sci-fi. That decision stripped the film of its identity. Audiences had no idea who John Carter was, or why they should care. The trailers lacked focus, hiding the story's epic Martian landscapes and its standout creature, Woola, in favor of vague, lifeless action. Taylor Kitsch delivered a sincere and physically demanding performance as a Civil War veteran transported to Mars, yet he became the fall guy for an unmarketable property. The catastrophe was compounded when his next film, Battleship, bombed just weeks later, a double hit that ended his leading man momentum. The irony is that John Carter was not critically despised. Many viewers later praised its world-building and earnest tone. But in Hollywood's unforgiving economy, the numbers spoke louder. Disney's colossal write-down triggered executive resignations, and Kitsch's promising ascent was halted by forces far beyond his control. Armie Hammer, The Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger was a textbook example of blockbuster excess gone wrong. With a production budget estimated between $215 million and $250 million, and a domestic return of only about $89 million, Disney suffered losses exceeding $190 million. The film's collapse was the result of unchecked ambition, bloated costs, and a tone that could never decide whether it was parody or Western epic. Director Gore Verbinski, reunited with producer Jerry Bruckheimer and Johnny Depp after the success of Pirates of the Caribbean. Together they envisioned a similarly grand spectacle. However, the Western setting, lengthy runtime, and violent set pieces alienated family audiences. Critics noted its muddled script and tonal whiplash. It alternated between slapstick and grim violence, never finding stable ground. Armie Hammer's performance as the title hero was serviceable but overshadowed by Depp's eccentric Tonto, who dominated both the marketing and narrative focus. Hammer's portrayal lacked charisma, and his straight-man routine felt hollow next to Depp's increasingly absurd antics. While the failure initially appeared to be another case of misguided studio planning, Hammer's later personal scandals retroactively ensured the franchise's burial. Disney quietly shelved all sequel concepts, and by 2021, Hammer's off-screen controversies had made The Lone Ranger a radioactive property. Tom Cruise, The Mummy. Universal envisioned The Mummy as the cornerstone of a new cinematic universe. Instead, it became a $95 million disaster that buried the entire dark universe before it began. With a budget nearing $195 million, the film's slim margins could not justify the massive marketing costs. The project's downfall stemmed from one fatal imbalance. It was no longer a monster movie but a Tom Cruise vehicle disguised as one. Reports from inside production confirmed that Cruise wielded near-total creative control. He rewrote sections of the script, supervised editing, and brought in his own team of writers, including Mission Impossible collaborator Christopher McQuarrie. This takeover shifted the story's focus from gothic horror to generic action spectacle. What should have been a haunting resurrection tale became a hybrid of chase scenes, exposition dumps, and Cruise-centric stunts. The titular mummy, played by Sofia Boutella, was reduced to a supporting role behind Cruise's character, Nick Morton. The tone lacked identity, too grim for family adventure and too glossy for horror. The studio's ambitious announcement of an interconnected monster universe, with precast stars like Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man and Javier Bardem as Frankenstein, was swiftly cancelled after The Mummy's failure. Director Alex Kurtzman later described the experience as brutal and the biggest failure of his life. Shia LaBeouf, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did not fail at the box office. It grossed over $790 million worldwide, against a budget of about $185 million. Its downfall was cultural rather than financial. The movie fractured fan goodwill built over 3 decades by turning a beloved adventure saga into a punchline. The two most notorious moments, the nuking the fridge scene, where Indiana survives a nuclear explosion by hiding in a lead-lined refrigerator, and the introduction of LaBeouf's character Mutt Williams, swinging through the jungle with CGI monkeys, cemented its reputation as a franchise embarrassment. The film's creative failure lay in its attempt to pass the torch. Mutt Williams was conceived as Indy's successor, a rebellious greaser revealed to be his son. Audiences instantly rejected him. Viewers found his attitude forced and his presence unworthy of replacing Harrison Ford's stoic charisma. LaBeouf worsened the situation off-screen. He publicly denounced the film and, more disastrously, criticized Steven Spielberg himself, saying the director had become a company, not a filmmaker. This betrayal alienated the very people who built his career through Transformers and Indiana Jones. When Dial of Destiny arrived in 2023, Mutt was written out entirely, killed off-screen to sever ties with the failed handoff. LaBeouf's self-inflicted fallout turned one of cinema's proudest legacies into a decade-long case study of how arrogance and disloyalty can end a Hollywood golden boy's ascent. Chris Hemsworth, Men in Black, International. Men in Black, International was designed to reboot the classic sci-fi comedy for a new generation. Instead, it became another franchise casualty. With a production budget of roughly $110 million and a domestic gross of about $80 million, Sony faced disappointing returns and abandoned sequel plans. The studio believed reuniting Thor Ragnarok stars Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson would replicate their prior chemistry and revitalize the brand. That gamble revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of what made original Men in Black work. The franchise thrived on the odd couple energy of Will Smith's streetwise humor paired with Tommy Lee Jones's dry stoicism, not simply two charismatic leads exchanging quips. Behind the scenes, production chaos compounded the creative misfire. Director F. Gary Gray reportedly clashed with veteran producer Walter Parkes, creating a power vacuum that left the movie without a clear vision. The initial script was rewritten repeatedly. New pages arrived daily, altering dialogue and story beats mid-shoot. The tone shifted from an edgier, modern spy comedy to a flat, family-friendly adventure stripped of personality. Hemsworth and Thompson remained committed professionals. Their chemistry was the only consistent strength in a confused production. Critics described the result as soulless and mechanically entertaining, praising the actors for holding together a movie unraveling around them. Hemsworth emerged with his reputation intact, but the franchise was left directionless. Jake Gyllenhaal, Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. Disney's Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, was positioned as the next great fantasy adventure, yet it failed to achieve the success of Pirates of the Caribbean. Produced for roughly $200 million and earning only about $90 million domestically, the film fell short of profitability and terminated all sequel plans. The project's failure stemmed from Hollywood's recurring video game curse, the inability to translate interactive storytelling into cinematic form. Director Mike Newell, who admitted he had never played the original game, delivered a generic action movie devoid of the source material's spirit. Critics described it as a hollow imitation, lavish but emotionally empty, full of sandstorms, parkour chases, and cliché dialogue. Jake Gyllenhaal's casting became a lightning rod for controversy. As a white American portraying a Persian prince, he faced widespread accusations of whitewashing that overshadowed both the film and his performance. The choice revealed the industry's outdated belief that star power could override authenticity. Gyllenhaal, known for his intense dramatic roles in Donnie Darko and Brokeback Mountain, seemed out of place amid Bruckheimer's glossy spectacle. Although he trained extensively and performed demanding stunts, the performance never connected with audiences. In later interviews, Gyllenhaal acknowledged regret, saying the experience taught him what wasn't for him. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Black Adam. Black Adam was Dwayne Johnson's 15-year passion project, a film he believed would redefine the DC universe. Instead, it became a $200 million-plus gamble that grossed only about $168 million domestically, falling far below its $600 million break-even point and costing Warner Brothers tens of millions. The movie's problems ran deeper than box office math. Johnson sought not just to star in a DC film but to control its direction. He positioned himself as the new center of the franchise, famously declaring that the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change. Behind the scenes, this turned into a political standoff. Johnson rejected plans to have his character face Zachary Levi's Shazam, insisting instead on linking Black Adam to Henry Cavill's Superman. When DC executives denied the request, Johnson bypassed them and went to the new studio heads, personally arranging Cavill's cameo. The move created chaos within the franchise. It forced public announcements of Superman's return that were swiftly retracted when new leadership canceled the idea weeks later. Johnson's power play fractured studio relationships and derailed both Shazam and Black Adam. The film itself offered nothing new. Critics described it as a repetitive barrage of slow-motion action sequences and humorless dialogue. By trying to reshape a shared universe around himself, Johnson inadvertently accelerated its collapse. Jared Leto, Suicide Squad, and Morbius. Jared Leto holds the unusual distinction of syncing two different superhero franchises in two separate universes. His first misstep came with Suicide Squad, a film that, while grossing more than $740 million worldwide, was savaged by critics for its incoherent editing and chaotic tone. Leto's method acting as the Joker generated more headlines than his actual performance. He reportedly sent fellow cast members grotesque gifts like live rats, bullets, and used condoms, behavior that drew public disgust rather than fascination. Much of his footage was later cut, reducing him to a glorified cameo while his reputation suffered. Warner Brothers quietly removed him from subsequent films. His Joker never returned as the studio pivoted to Joaquin Phoenix's version. Then came Morbius, Sony's attempt to expand its Spider-Man universe. Produced for roughly $80 million, the movie earned only about $73 million domestically and failed to make a profit worldwide. Critics condemned its lifeless story and dull execution, yet the aftermath was even more humiliating. Internet users transformed the movie into a meme factory, joking that it made a more $1 billion and that Leto's vampire exclaimed, "It's Morbin time." Sony misread the sarcasm as genuine enthusiasm and re-released the film into over 1,000 theaters. It earned a mere $300,000. Leto thus became the only actor associated with a film that bombed twice in the same year. If this breakdown of colossal flops hit the spot, you'll love where I go next. Click the video on your screen and find out.